Have you ever noticed how sometimes, after spending time with certain people, you don't feel uplifted or inspired, but instead exhausted? You walk away replaying the conversation in your head, wondering if you said something wrong or why you feel smaller than before. You tell yourself it's just stress or overthinking, but deep down, you know something doesn't feel right. That's the quiet signal most people ignore. The internal whisper that says, something about this relationship is taking more than it's giving. We live in a culture that glorifies loyalty. Stay with the people who've known you the longest. Forgive endlessly. Overlook the red flags in the name of history. But here's the truth most don't want to face. Time does not equal trust, and shared memories do not guarantee mutual respect. Sometimes the people we've known for years are the very ones keeping us from growing into who we're meant to become. And that realization, that your circle might not be as healthy as you thought, can be uncomfortable. But it's also where self-awareness begins. Healthy friendships are not supposed to drain your emotional energy. They should bring out your confidence, your calm, your clarity. They should feel like a safe space where your presence is valued, not just your usefulness. Yet many people mistake tolerance for love and endurance for loyalty. They stay in friendships that have long stopped nourishing them because they fear being alone more than being misunderstood. But emotional loneliness can exist even in a crowded room, even when you're surrounded by familiar faces. Think about it. How often do you silence your own discomfort just to keep the peace? How many times have you laughed at a joke that cut too deep or agreed with something that didn't sit right in your heart just to avoid tension? We tell ourselves that's maturity, that's keeping the friendship strong, but really, it's a quiet betrayal of our own boundaries. Every time you shrink yourself to make someone else comfortable, you teach your nervous system that your feelings don't matter, and over time, that pattern erodes your self-respect. Healthy relationships are not built on how much you can tolerate. They're built on how safe you feel to be honest. There's a difference between a friend who challenges you to grow and one who criticizes you to feel superior. One expands your awareness. The other chips away at your self-worth. But because emotional manipulation doesn't always look loud or obvious, many people spend years in friendships that quietly drain them. It's not the fights or disagreements that do the most damage. It's the subtle ways your energy gets siphoned, the dismissive tone, the competitive undertone, the lack of reciprocity masked as humor. You see, we're wired to bond. Psychologically, our need for connection is as vital as our need for safety, but not all connections are safe. Sometimes what feels familiar is simply what we've been conditioned to accept. If you grew up in an environment where love came with conditions, where affection was earned through performance or silence, you might mistake emotional inconsistency for normalcy. So when a friend treats you with disregard, your mind rationalizes it. That's just how they are. They didn't mean it. It's not worth bringing up. But every time you let it slide, you reinforce the belief that your peace is negotiable. The truth is, it's not. Your peace is not a luxury. It's your foundation. Without it, every interaction becomes a negotiation between who you are and who you think you have to be. And that's what unhealthy friendships often demand, a version of you that fits their comfort, not your truth. But growth demands honesty. It asks you to look at your relationships and ask the hardest question of all. Do I feel safe here? This question changes everything because it requires you to stop judging friendships by duration, by loyalty, or by convenience, and start evaluating them by emotional quality. Are you allowed to express yourself fully? Do they respect your boundaries without guilt-tripping you? Do they celebrate your growth, or do they subtly compete with it? These questions aren't meant to create paranoia. They're meant to awaken clarity, because awareness doesn't destroy relationships, it reveals them. Imagine this for a moment. You're sitting across from someone you've known for years. You're telling them about something that excites you, maybe a new opportunity, a new direction in life, something that feels like progress. Watch their reaction. Do their eyes light up for you, or do they shift the conversation back to themselves? Do they encourage you, or do they minimize your enthusiasm? Pay attention, because genuine friends don't compete with your light. They add to it. Sometimes it's not even about conflict. Some friendships fade because they were never built on emotional depth to begin with. They were built on convenience, proximity, shared interests, or seasons of life. And that's okay. Not every friendship is meant to last forever. The pain comes when we try to force outdated connections to stay relevant, ignoring the quiet truth that growth often means outgrowing. You're allowed to evolve. You're allowed to change. You're allowed to require more emotional intelligence from the people around you. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. What's dangerous about ignoring unhealthy dynamics is how easily they shape your identity. If you stay too long in environments where your value is questioned, you begin to question it yourself. You start censoring your joy, withholding your opinions, dulling your confidence, all to avoid being judged or misunderstood. Over time, this emotional shrinking becomes habit. And one day, you wake up realizing you've built your life around people who wouldn't even notice if you stopped showing up. The beauty of awareness is that it gives you choice. You can't control how people treat you, but you can control what you continue to allow. You can choose to surround yourself with those who see you, respect you, and value your presence not for what you provide, but for who you are. The shift begins with that one courageous moment of honesty. When you stop asking, "Do they like me?" and start asking, "Do I feel peaceful with them?" So as you think about your friendships, the people you text, the ones you confide in, the ones who take up space in your emotional life, ask yourself, do I feel uplifted after we talk? Or do I feel unseen, unheard, or subtly diminished? Because that difference, the one between peace and pressure, tells you everything you need to know. This isn't about cutting people off or labeling everyone toxic. It's about becoming aware of what health actually feels like. A healthy friendship doesn't require you to constantly prove your worth or manage someone else's emotions. It feels calm, grounded, supportive. You can breathe around those people. You can be silent and still feel understood. You can disagree and still feel respected. That's emotional safety. And it's the foundation of every genuine relationship. Most people never stop to question the quality of their connections until something breaks, until betrayal, disappointment, or distance forces them to look closer. But you don't have to wait for pain to bring you clarity. You can choose to observe now, to pay attention to the energy exchange in every interaction, to notice who listens and who only hears themselves, who uplifts and who quietly undermines. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. The question that changes everything isn't, how long have we been friends, or what do we have in common? It's this. Is this relationship helping me become a better version of myself? Or is it costing me my peace? That's where awareness begins. And once you see it clearly, you start realizing that protecting your peace isn't losing people. It's finding yourself again. A healthy friendship doesn't demand you to be perfect. It allows you to be real. It's not about constant agreement or flawless behavior. It's about the emotional space that lets both people show up as they are, imperfect, evolving, human. In a world that constantly tells us to perform, to wear masks, to prove our worth, a true friend is someone with whom you can exhale. You don't have to calculate every word or wonder if your honesty will cost you the relationship. You just know, even when things are hard, even when emotions rise, you're safe. That's the first sign of a healthy friendship. Emotional safety. It's invisible, but you can feel it. It's the calm in your body when you're with someone who listens, not to reply, but to understand. It's the warmth that comes from being accepted without pretense. You don't have to be the strong one all the time. You can have a bad day, make a mistake, and know that it won't be used against you later. Because real friends don't collect your vulnerabilities as ammunition. They guard them like trust. Healthy friendships operate on mutual respect. Respect for time, for boundaries, for individuality. You don't need to be in constant contact to stay connected, because trust doesn't require validation. You both understand that life gets busy, people evolve, and distance doesn't mean disinterest. There's no guilt trip when one of you needs space. Instead, there's understanding, a maturity that says, I trust you, even in silence. That's what emotional intelligence looks like in friendship, the ability to hold connection without control. Another sign is reciprocity. Real friendships are balanced, not perfectly, but consistently. There's a natural give and take. You don't feel like you're always the one reaching out, always the one listening, always the one holding emotional space. When the energy between two people is healthy, it flows in both directions. There's an unspoken rhythm. When you're tired, they step up. When they need support, you show up. You don't keep score, but you both notice and appreciate the effort. Because care doesn't need to be measured. It needs to be felt. Accountability is another pillar. A true friend doesn't just tell you what you want to hear. They tell you what you need to hear, but with compassion. They call you out without cutting you down. They don't shame you for your mistakes, but they don't enable you either. They hold up a mirror not as judgment, but as guidance. And when they're the ones who've fallen short, they take responsibility too. They apologize sincerely, not defensively. There's no pride in pretending to be right. There's integrity in owning the wrong. That kind of accountability builds deep trust because it tells you that your bond is rooted in honesty, not ego. Healthy friends are not threatened by your growth. In fact, they celebrate it. They see you evolve, and instead of feeling replaced or insecure, they feel inspired. They don't compete for the spotlight. They stand beside you in it. When you share good news, they don't deflect or downplay it. They mirror your joy. Their success doesn't require your failure, and your progress doesn't diminish their worth. That's what real connection looks like. It's not transactional, it's transformational. You can sense the difference in the way conversations feel. There's lightness, curiosity, laughter. You can discuss your dreams without fear of ridicule and your fears without being dismissed. The dialogue isn't one-sided or self-centered. It's not about waiting for their turn to speak. It's about truly engaging. In a healthy friendship, you both feel seen. There's genuine interest in each other's lives, and empathy replaces judgment. You can be vulnerable without being exposed. Boundaries are another quiet but crucial sign of health. A strong friendship respects limits, emotional, physical, and mental. You don't owe anyone your constant availability, and a healthy friend knows that. They don't take offense when you say no. They don't guilt you for having priorities or needing time alone. They understand that protecting your peace is not rejection, it's maintenance. And they do the same for themselves. Two emotionally aware people recognize that boundaries don't create distance. They create clarity. They allow love to exist without resentment. Healthy friendships also have a unique form of emotional generosity. It's not about material gifts or grand gestures. It's about the willingness to invest in each other's well-being. They check in, not out of obligation, but out of genuine care. They notice the subtle changes, the quiet in your voice, the pause in your laughter, and they ask how you're doing without making it dramatic. They create room for your emotions, even when they don't fully understand them. That kind of empathy is rare, and when you have it, you feel it deep in your nervous system, the calm, the grounding, the safety of knowing you're not alone in your experience. There's also trust, and not just in the sense of keeping secrets. It's the kind of trust that lets you be authentic. You don't have to perform or filter yourself to be accepted. You can share your truth and know it will be met with respect, not ridicule. You can disagree without fear that it'll become a silent war. You can walk away from a conversation feeling heard, not humiliated. Trust in friendship means knowing that when you're not in the room, your name is still protected. That's the highest form of loyalty, not presence, but protection in absence. Healthy friendships also make room for silence. You don't always have to fill the space with words. You can sit together in quiet and still feel connected. There's no anxiety in stillness, no pressure to entertain or impress. Because comfort doesn't come from constant talking. It comes from understanding. It's the unspoken energy that says, I'm here, and that's enough. You can measure the health of a friendship by how you feel after you leave. Do you feel lighter, more centered, more inspired? Or do you feel depleted, uncertain, uneasy? A true friend leaves you feeling more of yourself, not less. They bring you back to balance. They remind you of your worth without needing to say it outright, because their actions, their consistency, their presence already affirm it. In healthy friendships, there's also room for independence. You don't lose yourself in them, you expand yourself through them. You each have your own goals, your own paths, your own lives. And you respect that. You don't need to be constantly intertwined to feel connected. There's a mature understanding that space strengthens bonds, that individuality enhances intimacy. When two people can stand on their own and still choose to walk beside each other, that's connection built on strength, not dependency. You know a friendship is healthy when you can grow within it. Growth doesn't create distance. It deepens understanding. You learn from each other, challenge each other, and evolve together. There's no fear of outshining or outgrowing, only the excitement of becoming. It's the kind of friendship that pushes you gently toward your potential, that reminds you of who you are when you forget. A healthy friendship gives you the courage to be honest, even when it's uncomfortable. You can have difficult conversations without cruelty. You can express your needs without being labeled sensitive. You can speak your truth, and instead of defensiveness, you're met with care. Because at the core, both people want the same thing: connection built on truth, not tension. And perhaps one of the most powerful signs of a healthy friendship is peace. That quiet inner knowing that you don't have to look over your shoulder, that you don't have to question intentions, that you don't have to earn love. You're not performing, you're not guessing, you're not defending. You're just being, and that's enough. That's the beauty of emotionally intelligent connections. They don't just make your world brighter, they make you brighter. They reflect back the best parts of who you are, and when life tests you, they remind you that you're not alone in your growth. These are the people who want to see you win, even when it means you move beyond them. Because in their eyes, your evolution is something to celebrate, not fear. That is what health looks like. Not perfection, but balance. Not constant harmony, but mutual effort. A space where truth can breathe and both hearts can rest. There's a subtle heaviness that enters your body when a friendship turns toxic. You might not see it right away because toxicity rarely begins with betrayal. It begins with small shifts in energy. The constant interruptions when you speak. The jokes that sting but are brushed off as just teasing. The conversations that always seem to circle back to them. It's in the small moments where you realize you're no longer safe to be honest. Because honesty leads to conflict, guilt, or silence. Toxic dynamics are not always loud or obvious. Sometimes they're disguised as familiarity, as care, as just how we are. But deep down, your body knows the truth. It feels the imbalance long before your mind admits it. One of the first signs is emotional exhaustion. You leave interactions feeling depleted instead of restored. You find yourself preparing mentally before seeing them, rehearsing what you'll say, trying to avoid topics that could set them off. You're not being authentic. You're managing. That's not friendship. That's emotional labor. Real connection shouldn't feel like you're walking on glass, constantly adjusting yourself to maintain peace. When you spend more time managing someone's emotions than expressing your own, the relationship has lost its balance. Toxic friendships often thrive on control, subtle or overt. It can look like guilt tripping you when you can't meet up, making you feel obligated to explain your boundaries, or turning every disagreement into an emotional storm. They might remind you of everything they've done for you, not out of care, but as leverage. They make kindness transactional, something you owe them for. And so, slowly, you begin to lose your freedom. You start saying yes when you want to say no, and you call it loyalty when it's really fear of rejection. There's also the undercurrent of competition. They compare, minimize, or dismiss your achievements. If you're happy, they find a way to make you question it. If you're struggling, they center the conversation around their own pain. Everything becomes a silent contest. Who has it worse? Who has it better? Who is more deserving? That's not connection. That's insecurity masked as companionship. Healthy friends want you to win. Toxic ones want you contained. Another sign is inconsistency. They're warm one day and cold the next. You never know which version of them you'll get. They use affection and withdrawal to keep control. You find yourself chasing the moments when things feel good, convincing yourself that if you just try harder, they'll go back to being who they used to be. But that's the hook. The inconsistency keeps you attached, waiting for the version of them that no longer exists. And perhaps the most damaging sign of all is how you feel about yourself when you're around them. You start doubting your worth. You second-guess your perceptions. You apologize for things that aren't your fault. Toxic friendships distort your self-image until you believe that peace is something you have to earn, not something you deserve. But the truth is, no real friendship requires you to sacrifice your self-respect to keep it alive. There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize that peace is not something you stumble upon. It's something you create. It's not given by others, and it's not dependent on circumstances. It's born from the choices you make every single day about who you allow into your space, what energy you entertain, and what boundaries you uphold. Protecting your peace is not about isolating yourself from the world. It's about curating it. It's about consciously deciding that not everyone deserves front-row access to your heart. When you start valuing your peace, you begin to see relationships differently. You stop chasing validation and start seeking alignment. You realize that connection without respect is chaos, and familiarity without trust is danger disguised as comfort. Protecting your peace means being willing to disappoint others before you disappoint yourself. It means being okay with not explaining every boundary, not justifying every no, not feeling guilty for needing time alone. Because real maturity is understanding that your emotional energy is sacred, and you are responsible for how it's spent. For so long, people are taught that being a good friend means being endlessly available, endlessly forgiving, endlessly accommodating. But that kind of loyalty can become a cage if it's not rooted in mutual respect. Protecting your peace means learning to differentiate between compassion and self-neglect. You can love people deeply and still recognize when their presence is costing you too much. You can care for someone without allowing them to continuously cross your boundaries. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do, for both of you, is to step back. There is power in silence. The moment you stop explaining your worth to those determined not to see it, you reclaim energy that was never meant to be spent proving yourself. You start to notice how much lighter life feels when you stop fighting for relationships that resist honesty. You realize that peace isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It's subtle. It's the quiet comfort of waking up without dread. It's the calm of knowing your circle consists of people who respect your boundaries, honor your values, and meet your vulnerability with care. Protecting your peace requires courage. It means facing the discomfort of letting go, of outgrowing relationships that once felt like home but have now become heavy. It means accepting that not everyone you lose is a loss. Sometimes, you're just making room for better energy, for healthier connections, for people who see you clearly and choose you without conditions. Growth often requires subtraction. And though that process can feel lonely, it's also where strength is built. Because when you stop fearing solitude, you stop settling for anything less than sincerity.